Welcome into the show today. I'm feeling deeper and worse than I've ever been feeling. But here's my promise to you. This podcast will be in your feed 6 times a week, and I will do everything in my power to make that happen. So even though I feel like junk and I feel like crap, my voice is gone, and I really don't feel that bad, really. It's one of those situations where my voice feels like a 1, but my body feels like a 9.5, 10. So I'm feeling good, but my voice is clearly not the typical smooth sailing voice that typically spews out of my mouth.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
That's true. I don't know what I said. But here we are. Anyways. All right. The Minnesota Vikings offseason continues. And it's going to continue for the next, 8 months until September when the regular season starts again. Training camp starts in July. So 6 months. And right now, everyone's talking about the biggest offseason need, which I'll get there in a moment. I'll get there soon. Hey, we don't have to get there yet. It's January. End of January. We got February, March. We have a bunch of months to address off-season needs and NFL draft needs. But people get hyped for that stuff because that's the next big thing on the calendar for the Minnesota Vikings now that they're not in the Super Bowl. But because the Super Bowl is in less than 2 weeks, and because the Kansas City Chiefs are now in back-to-back-to-back Super Bowls, a chance to three-peat, something no other team in the NFL has ever done, my question that I'm going to answer is this. What is the Minnesota Vikings' biggest obstacle to winning a Super Bowl? Because that list will go from players to coaches to something completely different. And my thought is this. It's not about necessarily the Minnesota Vikings and their roster and their coaching staff or where Minnesota is. It is about the lack of parity in the NFL. The NFL likes to trick us. And the NFL plays a massive game with many fan bases. And the game is this. Every single year, your team has a chance. This could be your year. If things fall right and the cards go well, this could be the year that your team hosts the Lombardi Trophy. In training camp, in OTAs, the NFL messes with your mind and messes with your brain. Head coaches come with this organizational speech, and so do general managers, owners, and players. This could be our year if the things just fall right. And I love the game plan. I love the players in the locker room. Every guy in the organization says it. Because to some point, they do agree with that sentiment. They think that they are all that in a bag of chips. They think that they have the ability to make the leap and become a Super Bowl contender this year. And I fell for the Super Bowl contender hype from the Minnesota Vikings. But I overlooked a major milestone the Minnesota Vikings need to overcome. And that is the lack of parity there is in the NFL. Sure, if you look at playoff teams in the NFL, if you just want a chance at making it to the Super Bowl, I guess maybe your team has a chance. For example, let's look at the 2023 NFL playoff teams. The Browns made it. The Dolphins made it. The Cowboys made it. And every other team that made it in 2024 as well. So what that is telling me is that there are 3 other teams that made the playoffs in 2024 that did not make the playoffs in 2023. And those teams would be the Ravens, the Chargers, and the Broncos and Commanders. Is that right? I feel like I'm way off here now. What's going on here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What? I'm completely lost. Browns, 11-6. Broncos, they didn't make it. What am I missing here? 2024. The Chargers didn't make it in 2023. The Broncos didn't make it in 2023. The Commanders certainly didn't make it in 2023. And the Ravens, did they have a bye week? Is that what happened? Oh, here we go. The Ravens had the bye week. The good old bye week messed with my mind. Okay, here we go. So there are only 3 teams. I had that right. But the bye week was messing with my mind with the wild card weekend. All right. So 2023, the Browns, Dolphins, and Cowboys were playoff teams. In 2024, they weren't. So if you want to come with this parody idea, I guess you can have this parody idea. Okay? Oh, those 3 teams, the Chargers, the Commanders, and Broncos, I guess they have a chance this year. They have a chance to make it to the Super Bowl, and technically they do. But did they really? The answer is no. They did not. So the Minnesota Vikings' biggest obstacle to a Super Bowl run is the lack of parity in the NFL. Here's an amazing statistic. Comes from Dan on Twitter. It says this: the last 9 Super Bowls have featured a grand total of 8 different teams. The NFL is becoming more and more. That's not true. The NFL has always been predictable. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Josh Allen's going to be there in the AFC Championship game, divisional round. The NFL is largely predictable. And what is not in those predictions is the Minnesota Vikings making it to the Super Bowl. Because the NFL is largely predictable. The same players dominate the league every year. Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. It's predictable. The Packers are typically in the playoffs. The Eagles typically make the playoffs. So you think about the Minnesota Vikings addressing their offensive line issues and addressing their defensive cornerback issues. And really, that's not the problem. The problem is that the NFL is dominated by the same guys, the same players, the same coaches every season. So, as much as we want to make it about the Minnesota Vikings, it's really not. It's really about the NFL's lack of parity. And you look at the last time each NFL team made a Super Bowl. Well, you've got 4 teams that never even made it before. The Browns never made it. The Lions, the Texans, and the Jaguars have never made it to a Super Bowl. Well, then you look at the Jets. They haven't made it since 1968. The Vikings haven't made it since 1978. The Dolphins since 1984. Commanders 1991. Buffalo Bills 1993. So, the Commanders, NFC Championship game is fun. Buffalo Bills, divisional round, AFC Championship game every year. It's fun. But they haven't made it to the big game since I was born in 1991. Chargers 1994. Cowboys 95. America's team. Titans 1999. Raiders 2002. Bears 2006. Cardinals 2008. Saints 2009, there have been 17 teams that have not made the Super Bowl since 2009. 4 teams have never made it. And the Minnesota Vikings have not made the Super Bowl since 1978. And here's the Chiefs in back-to-back Super Bowls. In 5 Super Bowls out of the last 6 years. The Chiefs are a juggernaut. The 49ers have been in the Super Bowl multiple times these last few years. The Eagles have 2. The Rams won it. The Bengals had their one shining moment. But you think about it, and Tom Brady dominated the league. Patrick Mahomes currently dominates the league. And then you got a random 49ers are in a couple times, Eagles are in a couple times, Rams once, Bengals once. And it's largely predictable. So that is the biggest obstacle facing the Minnesota Vikings as they try to make a push at a Super Bowl. It's not about the Vikings and what they can address. It's about the NFL lacking complete parity. Because you got Josh Allen, MVP candidate every year, and he's been in the league for years. And the last time the Buffalo Bills have played in a Super Bowl is 1993. They've never made it to the big game. So when we address the question of, is this team Super Bowl contenders? I think the first thing we need to answer is Patrick Mahomes on your team? And is your team complete? The Eagles have a complete team. The 49ers had a complete team. The Rams had a complete team when they made it. The Bengals did too. So, it is about adding roster spots, and the Minnesota Vikings need to shore up their roster on the offensive line. But is it just that? The NFL is not a league of parity. It's a league dominated by a select few. And those select few have never been on the Minnesota Vikings roster. It's the truth. So the Minnesota Vikings' biggest obstacle is actually outside the doors of the Minnesota Vikings facility, because it's dominated by the top players in the league. Thank you for watching this episode. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching. And thank you for making this podcast a part of your day.